Thank you for joining us for Unlocking Home Ownership with the San Pablo EDC. Today, we're going to have a presentation by the MV Rod team with Marcos and Vanessa Rodriguez. We're going to learn a little bit about what rent versus owning a mortgage. A few housekeeping items. The webinar is being recorded. A recording will be available on our websites at www.sanpabloedc.org. Any resources mentioned during the presentation will also be available on our site. All attendees are muted. If you're having issues with audio, you may need to click on the webinar screen to enable audio. We welcome your questions. Please type them in the Q&A box. We will answer them at the end of the webinar if time permits. About the San Pablo EDC, the mission of San Pablo Economic Development Corporation is to act as a catalyst for equitable economic opportunity, programs and services to support the advancement. We focus on employment and training and support, home ownership, like today, this webinar, business resources, and access to capital. To learn more, please visit our website at www.sanpabloedc.org. Now to our partners, the MV Rod team, we have Marco Rodriguez with us, who will be presenting on versus rent versus buying a home and owning a mortgage and a home versus renting an apartment.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and just wanted to introduce myself once again. My name is Marco Rodriguez. I am a local real estate broker here in the area, practicing real estate alongside with my wife for a little over 21 years. And today the topic is rent versus mortgage. Which one is the right choice for you? As we look into buying a home, maybe it's, been on our minds, or maybe it's the beginning of the year, we tend to start making that one of our goals. Sometimes we have to decide if it's worth buying or maybe is it worth renting. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the differences between both to rent or to purchase your very own home. Next slide, please. Buying a house obviously has many, many benefits. Number one, as you can see here on the chart, it is wealth building. So over time, typically real estate tends to appreciate. So over time, you're going to be able to build wealth through your property. If we were to look back 20 years ago where the values were at in homes and where they are now, it is, sometimes double, sometimes triple, sometimes more is the values that the values that are today versus what they were 20 years ago. So obviously there's a lot of wealth that is built inside of the home. So one of the reasons why someone would consider buying a house is obviously to build wealth. Number two is stability. When you have your very own home, it's very stable because you're going to be able to be there for as long as you want to be there until you decide to maybe move, to maybe either rent it out or maybe sell the property. So it's very, very stable. So it's another reason why a lot of people look into buying a house. It's also something where you can personalize it, where you can actually change the color, whether it's the exterior, it's the interior, whether you want to remodel, decorate, whatever you want to do to that house, it is yours. Obviously, with homes, it just really depends. If you have it like a homeowner association, sometimes they can be a little bit strict on some of the things you may not be able to do. But for the most part, anything that's on the inside of the walls, you're going to be able to make it your very, very own. So this is another reason why a lot of people like to buy homes, to make it their own and give it that own personal touch. Also, we talked about the value appreciation over time. Right now, I know we're in some times where we're kind of at the peak of the market, but at the same time, over time, it's statistically been proven that real estate does appreciate. So it's something that's more on the long-term side. That's going to be something that you can probably use in the future. You can have equity built inside your property, and you can, if needed, use those funds for, remodeling or for college or for maybe buying a second home. So value appreciation is something that's very, very key. And one of the other reasons why a lot of people look into buying their very own home are the tax benefits. There's so many tax benefits that are involved with real estate. You're able to write off your interest. You're able to write off your taxes. There's a PMI that you're paying, private mortgage insurance. You can write that off, and your insurance. So you can write off a lot of things when you have your very own home. And if you have investment properties, you're able to also write off things as vacancies or, utilities that you're paying, things of that nature. So there's a lot of great things that come when you buy your very own home. Next slide, please. Now, just like you're buying a home, there's some advantages, then there's also some disadvantages, just like with anything in life, right? Number one, there's maintenance responsibility. This is something that you have to be ready emotionally and also be prepared because there's going to be responsibility when you maintain your property. Like for anything, everything always has a beginning and it has an end, like a roof, just like paint. You need electrical needs to be upgraded. So you have to make sure that you have funds set aside to be able to invest in these areas. There's going to be always repairs. There's always going to be maintenance. There's going to be a lot of things that you have to look into when you're buying your very own home. So is it something that you're ready for? Are you mentally prepared? Is it something that you want to have on the back burner, just knowing that at one point you're probably going to realize that, oh my gosh, I have to change my roof, and that's a pretty big ticket item, or maybe I have to change these windows, or maybe the furnace went out or water heater went out. You have to be ready to be able to have those funds set aside to invest in your property. It's also a long-term commitment. Like I said, real estate over time appreciates, but then, some people have this idea that maybe real estate is just going to continue to go up. And we've seen in the last few years, especially that we usually peak out and then the values start to decline a little bit. They start to soften, and then the market starts to get a little bit stale at some point. So you usually want to have that mentality where you're going to buy real estate, hold on to it for for a few years. Typically, I would say it's always good to think that you're going to be in a property at least 5+ years. Obviously 10, 15 years, you're going to be able to see all the advantages, but it's always good to go with that mindset that you might be in there at least 5 or more years. You're able to sell anytime before the 5-year peak, but to really, really take full advantage, I always say it's a good sweet spot to think about it as 5 years. There's going to be high costs when you buy a property. There's your down payment. You're going to typically be putting anywhere from 3% all the way to 20% down or more. We do have a lot of programs that you can use to bring in less than the 3%, 3.5%. But again, that's going to be a big chunk of money that you're going to you have to bring to the table. You're going to have closing costs as well. These are all costs involved with the purchase of your property, as well as other miscellaneous fees. You're probably going to want to do inspections. You have to get an appraisal. So all these costs tend to add up. So you have to have the mindset that you come in with your down payment plus other costs. So you have to be ready to be able to let go of those funds, because when you buy your house, those funds are tied in to your property until you either refinance or you're able to do some type of equity line of credit on your property. The market is another thing that we have no idea where it's going to go. It tends to fluctuate over time. It really depends when you purchase your home, where you're going to probably be at for the next few months or a few years. Sometimes when you purchase a property, you purchase it at the peak of the market, and the market starts to come down. Maybe now you owe more than what your property is worth. So maybe you can't refinance, or maybe there's going to be a job that you want to accept, but maybe you're not in a position to sell. So maybe you need to rent out your home. So these are some things that you have to think about before you make that decision. So these are some of the disadvantages. Next slide, please. Now, renting a house, if you decide that maybe right now is just not the time for you to purchase a house, maybe right now is the right time just to rent a house. And obviously there's a lot of benefits as well. There's flexibility. This is for people that maybe are constantly on the move. Maybe you have a position at work where you're constantly moving. Maybe it's not the best choice to purchase a home because you don't know where you're going to be in 6 months or a year from now. So maybe renting a house is probably the way to go because of the flexibility. There's less responsibility. Again, you're not being married, you're just dating, right? You're just you don't have that full commitment just yet. When you purchase your property, you typically have about a 30-year mortgage. And when you're renting a house, it can be anywhere from 6 months to a year on a lease. So there's that, there's less responsibility. You're not tied into it. And then again, the landlord, the great thing about renting is the landlord is going to make sure that they do all the repairs. So this is something that you don't have to worry about. There's lower cost when you are renting a house. Typically, they want a deposit and your first month of rent. So that's something that's going to be a lot less than your down payment of a house, right? So again, there's just a lot less cost involved when you're renting. Of course, you have a lot of different things that are neat about renting a property. There's a lot of amenities, sometimes they're included. If you're in a place where maybe they have a gym, pool, they have things that are just really, really neat clubhouses, things of that nature where you can actually use because you're renting in that community. Those are really, really nice perks to have. So again, renting a house does have its benefits. Next slide, please. Now, just like with anything else, there's advantages and disadvantages. One of the first things that you have to think about before you rent is there is no wealth building. You will never have a percentage of ownership in that property unless you purchase it, right? But if you're renting it, you could be renting that house for 20 or 30 years. Maybe you could have paid that house already if you would have purchased it. But because you're renting it, there is no wealth built into that property. All the wealth was built for the owner because you're already renting. So that's one of the biggest disadvantages. Another one is also the rent increases. We have seen that rent has just skyrocketed the last few years. So again, maybe you were paying, for that same property 5 years ago, maybe $500 less than what you're paying now. If you do the math, that's just a lot of money that's going into the landlord's pocket. So again, at any given point, the landlord can say, we want to increase the rents, inflation. We want to just make sure that we can increase the rents for the taxes and insurance because as a landlord, they want to make sure that they're covering all their expenses. They can very well do so. And as long as they are within the law and within the guidelines, they can actually increase your rents. And then what's going to happen is now that same property is going to cost you a lot more. So that's another disadvantage. And there's also the lack of control. You can't do much to a property. So if you think about it, let's just say that you don't like the carpet. You have a carpet in your property and you want nice laminate white plank flooring. And for some reason, talk to the owner, you've been there, you're a great tenant. And they say, no, we actually just want to maintain our carpet. We don't want to change the flooring. But he or she says, if you want to take it upon yourself and you want to change the carpet to laminate flooring, by all means, go ahead and do it. Now you can actually do it. You can remodel, you can put those nice laminate plank flooring, but what's going to happen is they take advantage. It now belongs to them. So that's one of the things that you really can't do, or you're going to be able to have any type of advantage. You're going to do it. Yes, you live there, you like it, but now the one that's going to benefit is the owner. Because anytime you put anything into a property that's not yours, the only one that gets all the perks and all the benefits really is the landlord. So you have a lack of control to be able just to remodel because why invest into a property that's not really yours, right? And again, there's the instability. The landlord, sometimes they might have a family that might want to move in. Maybe they can, figure out a way how to come to an agreement where maybe they can have their family move in. Of course, they have to look at all the rent laws in the area. But if they're able to do so, then what's going to happen is that you might not have a place to stay. If they have family over, someone elderly mom or something like that wants to move in the property. So that's going to put you at a disadvantage because now you have to look for another place to live. Maybe you liked it, maybe you thought you were going to be there for a long time, and then maybe it just so happens that you're there out sooner than you expected. Next slide, please. So just wanted to kind of summarize everything so you can think about what you want to do, whether to buy a house or maybe to rent a house. These are some of the things that you have to, take in consideration. Number one, just your commitment level. Do you want something for the long term or do you want something for the short term? Long term is great if you want to buy a house. If you're not really into a long-term commitment just yet, then maybe renting a house is the way to go. If you want to build equity, looking at it as an investment, buying a house is definitely the way to go. If you're not looking at it from an investment standpoint, maybe you have other options, maybe stocks or things of that nature, then maybe just renting a house would be a better choice. Maintenance is going to be your responsibility. So if you're buying a house, just remember that it is your responsibility. But now, if you don't like that responsibility, then renting a house is better. Let the landlord take care of it. The cost, the initial cost, again, you have to put your down payment, closing costs, all that good stuff into buying a house. So if you don't have that capital, maybe it's time just to continue to rent a house, maybe save up a little bit of the down payment, and then you're going to be able to purchase your house in the future. But for the time being, maybe because of the fact that they only need a security deposit, as well as just the first month rent, renting a house is the way to go. If you like just having full control of your living space, buying a house is definitely the way to go. If you like to remodel, you like to, have very nice artistic paints and things of that nature, buying a house is the way to go. But if you just are okay with whatever's provided for you, then just renting a house is the way to go. So this is just kind of a quick summary for you to take a look at, think about it, meditate, and just see which one is the best way to go. Next slide, please. Again, here's just another breakdown: investment versus expense, property control, flexibility, and initial cost. Buying is a long-term investment. Renting is just a recurring expense. You're just going to continue to be renting over the next few months or years. As a homeowner, you have full control. As a renter, you're depending on your landlord. Flexibility is going to be very, very key in when you buy a house versus when you are renting, you don't have much flexibility there. And we already talked about the costs. Next slide, please. So what's best for you? Again, when you are considering to buy a home or to renting, you have to look at these different factors and just kind of factor it in. Just see what you have in mind. Is it a few months from now, a few years that you would like to make this decision? Then you have to really think about it, because if it's something where you see yourself maybe buying a house, or maybe just you're not ready for it, I would say instead of buying something that you're really not really comfortable with, or maybe you're just not sure if you're ready, I would say go ahead and just rent a property so you can make sure that you are, again, emotionally ready. You're going to be financially ready. You're going to be very stable. Go ahead and just rent. I would say that would be my best recommendation, because you do have to understand that this is a commitment. It's a long-term commitment. You don't want to just buy a property and then all of a sudden find yourself that you're in a situation where maybe you weren't financially ready. So buying a house, definitely you have to be ready for it. You've got to make sure that you think about the area, think about the commute, think about the payments that are going to be every month before you make the decision to fine tune it and make sure that you're ready for it. So when you are thinking about all these things, just decide if you want to purchase 2025 or maybe delay it the next year, or and maybe renting for the next 6 months or a year, maybe until that pay increase comes in, and then maybe you can have a little bit more cash on hand, and maybe you can jump into home ownership. Next slide, please. And that is the brief slideshow that we have for you, just to kind of give you an idea on what are some of the options, whether you're buying or whether you're renting. This is our website right here, www.mbrod.com, and our contact information and email address as well. If you have any questions, we would love to be able to talk to you. We do buyer consultations at no cost, no obligation, so you can feel comfortable about the next decision that you're going to make, whether it be buy or maybe whether it be renting. Next slide.
And thank you for joining us. This is our contact information, my contact information, Aurora Betancourt here, San Pablo EDC, Marcos and Vanessa's contact information below. I want to open it up for questions. Is there any questions? And if there is, if you can type them in the Q&A. If any of the attendees present today have any questions. Give it a minute or so. If you don't have any questions, you'd like more information about our down payment assistance programs, or the down payment assistance program that Marcos Preferred Lenders have, please drop your cell phone in the chat. We will have our wish funds available in April, up to $30,000. It is qualified, income qualified. So if you'd like that information, please reach out. Also, if you have any other questions, this webinar will be posted on our website, and we can, and it'll have our contact information if you happen to have any questions in the future. Thank you for joining us.